Happy Third Thursday, everybody. And now let's talk automation. Hello, everybody. Happy Third Thursday. I am so excited to be here with you all. And Kieran and I are just thrilled to have some more guests along with us today. We will get into our specific introductions and that honorary icebreaker question here in just a second with Andrew and Katie. But I do want to take a moment and just make sure that I call out for everybody who is joining us from the community as we're doing our introductions and answering these icebreaker questions. Do the same in the comments. We want to know where you're joining from and your thoughts on our icebreaker question. So as we get started, Andrew, I'm going to come to you for your introduction, and then we will kind of dovetail into the icebreaker question from there. So Andrew, can you give everybody a quick introduction?
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. And hello, everybody. Really glad to be here. My name is Andrew Burgess. I'm an independent advisor on artificial intelligence. What that means is I help organizations develop and implement their AI strategy. So I help them find the opportunities for AI that meet their business challenges and objectives. I'm also the author of the Executive Guide to Artificial Intelligence, which was published a couple of years ago. And I'm visiting senior fellow at Loughborough University for AI and RPA, and also expert in residence at Imperial College's Enterprise Lab as well. So yeah, so that's me.
Great. And everybody, I will be putting a link to that book in the chat, as well as Katie's, and we talk a bit more about that here in a moment. So keep an eye out for that and make sure you check it out. And so now, Andrew, I'm going to ask you our icebreaker question today, which is, in the world of AI, what is your pet peeve, maybe misconception or that type of thing in regard to AI?
Yeah, so I think there's a real issue that people think that AI can solve everything for them. You know, this silver bullet. And you know, when we last spoke, Emma, I said, you know, potential clients ring me up and say, "Can I have an AI, please?" And you know, that's clearly the wrong question to ask. They need to be thinking, what are my challenges? What are my objectives? And is AI an appropriate solution for that? So it's kind of, let's turn the conversation around. Let's talk about how AI can help you meet those challenges and objectives, rather than just doing AI for AI's sake.
That is still from our last discussion. That idea of one AI, please, always makes me chuckle a little. Oversimplification, I think, a little. I'm all for simplifying, but maybe not quite so much.
Yeah.
All right, so Katie, I'm going to come to you for your introduction then, and then we'll get your thoughts on our icebreaker question as well.
Thank you very much, Emma. Well, I'm really the female version of Andrew. I am also an author. So I'm 54. I've been in this business for about 30 years, but I've had to put myself out of my comfort zone. I'm learning all the time. I'm a consultant, do a lot of management consultancy work with companies, helping them be more agile, grow with their go-to-market strategies and so on. So I wrote this book. It was published in 2019, and I'm right in the middle of submitting my next book to my publisher Kogan page in June. So I'm right in the thick of interviewing people from all over the world about AI strategy, what works, best practice, problem areas, who the vendors are, all of that. So that's what I do day to day. I run a digital marketing agency as well. And I'm on the all-party parliamentary group looking at the adoption of AI in enterprise. So, as I say, I'm learning all the time, but I've got a lot of advice to share and some very concrete, real case studies that hopefully will inspire you and give you some good lessons.
I've been saying it in preparation for this event for a while now, but like the fact that those ideas are flowing for that second book is to all of our benefits to be able to tap into that today during our conversation. So I'm going to come to you with your pet peeve in the AI world as well.
Yeah, I had to really think carefully about this one. I initially wanted to say, you know, this misconception of the big shiny robot taking all of our jobs, but we hear about that all the time. So after giving it a bit more deeper thought, I wanted to really say passivity. We can't be passive in relation to AI. It isn't just someone else's problem, and it isn't just somebody else's opportunity. So I think there are opportunities for everyone in every job function, in every industry all over the world, if we really deeply think about how AI can help us do our job better, differently, and help us with our companies. So that's the positive bit. The other aspect of that passivity is the regulation, the code of conduct. The world is moving fast, and the legal teams, the regulators don't always catch up and not always ahead of us, and we all have to play our part internationally in doing the right thing. And so that being more proactive and active rather than passive is really where I would like to see us all act.
I like that you had kind of a two-part message there. And it is interesting to think about, as we are in the world of emerging technology, nobody has all the answers. and that's going to be something that we're going to continue to see evolving and all get to play a role in, which I think is really exciting. So I'm glad you brought that point up. All right, so now I think everybody who's joining us is probably familiar with my co-host here, Kieran, but will you take a moment to say hello to everybody and then answer our icebreaker question as well?
Should say hello, everybody. I've not written a book, but I've read both of these books. That can be my claim to fame, I think. One, Katie's in particular. Katie, I remember texting you from an airport one stage or LinkedIn and saying I was reading that over to the US. I read it then, never slept. I think I've been in digital transformation the last 2.5 decades. Data analytics has always been part of that journey. I ran a data science team for 11 or 12 years, had the most fun ever. Although I do laugh when I was sat at one end of the room near them, I felt stupid. When I moved away, I felt a lot cleverer. So I sat well away from them. And look, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. Emma, did you want my pet peeve as well?
I sure did. I was just about to put that up on the screen and ask the question. So what is your, pet peeve in the world of AI?
Am I allowed more than one? But I'll do one, because you could talk about the constant debate about definition and what is AI or whatever else. But mine is you need perfect data for everything every single time. For a clinical diagnosis, yes, you do need perfect data because it is someone's health, well-being and potential life. But for something like, what's the average retention of a firm, and looking at predictive analytics to determine how many insurance clients are going to stay with a particular insurance broker, or what price should customers to be charged, or what are the volumes coming into contact center in the next 6, 12, 18 months. You don't need perfect data, and therefore don't allow perfection to stop you moving forward, introducing analytics into your organization where they can make a tremendous difference to how you actually approach your business, the decisions you make, and the money and the direction you take. That's mine.
Wonderful. Well, and I also wanted to point out just a couple. I'm not going to be able to put everybody's, but I do see the comments coming in and everybody joining us from all around the world, which is always so exciting to see. We love to hear your comments and come back and interact with that after the live stream. So make sure that you're putting your thoughts in as we're going through the discussion, because that's our favorite part, is the community here. So we're going to dive into some of our more in-depth questions here. And Katie, I'm going to come to you first. So in the chat, I'm going to put the link to the article that I'm referencing here. But a couple months ago, you wrote an article that was on LinkedIn and your blog that was focused on how do we start to lean into AI a little bit more in our economic standpoint today. And you had some really great use cases. And going back to that book that you mentioned, I'm sure there are all sorts of ideas in that noggin. So can you get us started by talking about where you believe the biggest opportunities for companies are to start leveraging AI and some of those use cases?
Yeah, definitely, Emma. And I think this is a really good point, because AI is accessible to even the very small organizations. And unfortunately, the media tends to fill the pages with the huge brands and usually business to consumer. So what I really wanted to say is AI obviously is transforming certain industries. whether that's finance or retail, and others as well, like manufacturing. But it's also reshaping loads of different job functions: sales, marketing, customer experience. And so in my book, it's not obviously not all my words. I've created a case study, a selection of case studies from all around the world of businesses of all shapes and sizes. So you have, for example, companies where the sales department is using different machine learning and AI tools, and it's helping them uncover new leads. It's helping them think about how do they follow up with customers and with their contacts. And again, there are lots of different tools that help you do that. In a customer service example, it might be to do with dealing with a big volume of inquiries, and that might be some kind of conversational AI. It might be like an Amelia chatbot, for example. It could be the marketing team where they're using tools like Phrasee or Conversica, and they're taking away the guesswork from marketing, and they are, for example, able to find the right kind of personas and personalize their response to those people. So CX, sales, and marketing coming together, and the tool, the AI, the software is looking at previous data. It's predicting likely behavior based on a very granular approach to it. So it might say, for example, use this headline in your email and you're going to get a much better open rate. And so really what we're moving forward with AI is AI in education, AI in marketing, AI in sales, is personalization. And it's a bit of a paradox because we think AI, artificial intelligence, but actually really this is augmented intelligence. So in your HR, in your sales, in your customer experience, you are getting big data insights that are allowing you to deliver much more value to that customer, whether that's sifting of CVs and knowledge of your staff and so on. So that's really one of the main areas that I'd like to pinpoint, and that is cheap and fairly accessible because there are these hundreds of thousands of AI startups that are all vying and competing and have these tools at your disposal. You don't necessarily have to go to a major vendor to be able to take advantage of these.
Wonderful. Thank you. And again, I did link the article that we were talking about, but I like that you were talking specifically about things that are attainable and easy for organizations to start using. Because I think that if I were going to say a pet peeve of mine, which I guess I skipped over at the beginning, but when I look at this industry, one of the things that I think, because it's a buzzword and because we're also excited about AI and all of the potential, we immediately start to think of the movie I, Robot from when I was a child, or houses that are going to be completely autonomous and all of these really extreme use cases. But there are tons of opportunities for businesses to start leveraging this technology today and start making an impact and improving their operations. So thank you for sharing some of that with us. Andrew,
I've one funny thing just in that I, Robot movie. Do you remember the line when who was the main actor in that one? Whatever, I can't remember his name.
I think Will Smith, yeah.
Will Smith, he turned around and says to the robot, he was complaining about artificial intelligence and automation, and says, can a robot write a piece of music? Can a robot draw a picture? Can a robot do this, all the creative stuff? And the robot turned around and says, can you? And it just, I went, all right, as a human, I better be quiet.
Absolutely.
So Andrew, I'm going to come to you, and I, again, will share this in the chat for everybody to take a deeper dive into some of this. But when we take a look at use cases and specifically case studies, I found one case study with Parkinson's UK that was very timely in regard to kind of the response to the pandemic, but also blended a number of different AI use cases together. So can you start by sharing a little bit about that case study and then some of the different technologies that are being leveraged there today?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those who don't know, Parkinson's UK is the leading charity within the UK that focuses on Parkinson's disease. And there's no known cure for Parkinson's disease yet. And I started working with them the beginning of 2020. I just followed on. I've just been working with Prostate Cancer UK as well. I did an AI strategy for them, and then started to do an AI strategy for Parkinson's UK starting around about February. And then, of course, we had lockdown, and the impact of lockdown on all charities, to be honest, is that donations dried up overnight. So they were no longer interested in their medium-term AI strategy. They were worried about, how are we going to pay people tomorrow? It's kind of that kind of emergency going on. So rather than focus on the AI strategy at the time, I kind of pivoted what I was doing to say, right, how can AI help them immediately? What's the things we can do today that's going to help them tomorrow? So we did a couple of things, and we had to, rather than build AI, through coding, etc., because that takes a little bit of time. We brought a couple of vendors in, just for speed, really, and we negotiated some COVID pricing, as I call it, just to get some good deal and get some things in quickly. But the first one was to look at their donors' propensity to donate. So can we predict which of their donors or what their existing donors were more likely to donate? So that what that means is that you can then, when you're targeting your community, your donors, one, you can actually send the messages, and particularly leaflets, because a lot of their community is elderly, so they react more to something coming through the post box than an email. So there's a cost associated with that. So can we send less leaflets out but get more funds back in return? So that means targeting those people that have a higher propensity to donate. So by feeding in all the historical information, built a model through the vendor, and then the campaign that went out actually came back with a very high rate of return. So we managed to actually reduce the cost of the campaign but increase the funding at the same time. So that was really, really useful to them. Secondly, we if you remember at the time, this is kind of March 2020, full lockdown, and what people were worried about kind of changed on a week-by-week basis. We were kind of stepping into the unknown, and what the charity wanted to do was be able to be on message in terms of what they were telling their community. So we put in this software by a company called Relative Insight, which uses natural language processing to identify the changes in all of the different messages that are going around. So there's the forums, there's the social media, there's the transcripts, the telephone calls coming in. So it takes all of that, picks out the themes that are going on each one, and then looks at the differences from one week to the next. So, for example, in the early stages, people were worried about, well, what is this disease? Am I going to get the virus, etc. Then they started worrying about getting access to medical professionals. Then they started worrying about getting where am I going to get my shopping from? And then, will I have a job at the end of this? So what the charity was able to do was, in their messaging, going out target very specifically to react to what their community was worried about, and that was really, really helpful. And there was some things like physiotherapy. So it's very important for people with Parkinson's to get physiotherapy on a regular basis, and people couldn't do that. So that was one of the things they were worried about. So they actually upped their online physiotherapy sessions to kind of cope with this additional demand. So that was kind of the initial reactions. I should say, kind of following that, when the dust has settled a little bit, I finished off the strategy, but still kind of funds were low. But what we found was that there was still money to do research into Parkinson's, but people couldn't go into the labs to do the research, the wet research, as they call it. So there was kind of a gap opening up here. So what we proposed was actually going in and saying, right, we can do research using AI on Parkinson's disease, and we don't need to go into labs, etc. So we can do it all remotely. So we scoped out a range of different things, and since probably October time of last year, we've been working on using a lot of the data that they've got, because they fund a lot of studies. So we've essentially got access to this data to look at, particularly looking for subtypes of Parkinson's within the data, the cohort data that they have. So we're doing some really interesting work in defining these clusters and then looking at the progression rates for those clusters, which will help clinicians, and particularly in clinical trials, target the right people to put into those clinical trials. So kind of, for us, the pandemic has really shaped what we've done and driven us down actually some very exciting routes that we may not have had before. So, it's a good thing from that point of view, but, luckily we've been able to help the charity right at their point of need.
I think this is like a really powerful case study, to your point, that this is a very tangible example of how transformation has been pushed to new boundaries by the pandemic, because to your point, you may not have explored some of these ideas had you not been put into a situation that required it and necessitated it. Where we're hearing all sorts of things about how digital transformation has been accelerated, but it's really nice to have like a true case study to show that. Kieran, I'm coming to you, and I'm going to make you distill one of your articles that you shared earlier this week that had 17 tips for organizations looking to develop their data strategy. I want your number one tip. So this is like a full distilling of that message to talk through. What is that number one tip?
Kind of, if I do that, everyone will read. I'll not read the article then. But the number one tip mine is just hire great data analysts, first of all, and then give them the tools and the support that they need to do the job. Too often, we hire a data analyst, we don't give them any support, we don't give them the tooling, we don't give them political cover, we don't explain the business or whatever else, and then it becomes their problem and we all decide that data analytics doesn't work. It's not the case. If organizations have data, then they can certainly make better decisions if someone runs the analytical models and methods on them. But, in some instances, don't expect that data analyst to come up with a business case all by themselves. They need that support from the CFO and from the business. Don't expect them to do it from day one either, because sometimes you'll discover patterns in the data you haven't seen. It takes time to drive value, but just get a great data scientist, data analyst, whatever you want to call them, give them the support they need, give them the tools, help them build a business case so that you build a bit of experience and confidence using data to make better decisions in whatever AI or data analytical models you want, and then move from business case to business case to business case, just as you grow what I describe as data analytic muscle over time. So I was saying anything, Emma, it would be as simple as that. Great people make great businesses, not the tools or the computers or anything else. So hire someone great and give them all the support they need to be great.
And I just put in something in the comments as well and tagged John Perry. We actually had a discussion. He does, he's the director of data at Syracuse University, and we had a conversation about making sure that you also position people into the right portion of your organization. So having people that are really great at distilling and communicating data, that might not be the same person as the person that's a really great data scientist. So making sure that you're not looking for that one specific unicorn that can do everything, and having realistic expectations of how to build out that human capital strategy associated with data. Because to your point, Kieran, the tools are the tools. They're going to do what they're determined to do, but it's the people that are working with those tools that are going to kind of make the magic happen for your organization. So Katie, I'm going to come to you again, and this one is going to be kind of a similar challenge that I just gave Kieran of like that one tip. And I'm gonna ask both you and Andrew to do this for us. But when we take a look at, again, we went back to some of those pet peeves at the beginning and some of these misconceptions about AI and data. But if you had an executive in front of you and you were able to give them a piece of advice or help them understand one idea as it pertains to AI and data for them to drive their strategy moving forward, what would that look like?
Oh, yeah, really good. As you know, I have got a scorecard for success, so I'm not cheating. I just want to reference that because this is actually very multifaceted. And so I would say they do need to realize that this coming up with an AI strategy has an impact on multiple different parts of the organization. And so I'm thinking here about the mindset, the culture, the interdependence, the budget. So, you can have a look at that scorecard for success. And so I would be saying to that CEO, to that leader, you do need to realize there's no quick fix here. The benefits can be phenomenal, but you do need to look at the whole piece. But that's me cheating and saying, here's that big picture. The one bit I really would say to them, though, compliance, regulation is so important. And so they do need to make sure that whatever they do, it must be lawful, it must be fair, it must be transparent. And that is law already, because that's part of GDPR Articles 13 and 14. So the explainability, the consent and so on, that bit of it is absolutely fundamental. So they must make sure that they're operating within the guidelines. But bigger picture, have a look at my scorecard, think about the whole piece of it.
And I did also put that into the chat. I don't think it's coming through here. So please let me know if you guys aren't able to see that on LinkedIn, because it's a picture, so it's not streaming through all of my channels appropriately. Someone should get in on that integration work. But so that is also included in the chat for you guys. So Andrew, I'm going to ask the same thing to you as well, getting that to that distilled message to that modern executive on AI and data.
I think, in the words of Public Enemy, don't believe the hype. AI, they need to think of AI as a tool. It's a tool that's going to help them have deep insights about their customers, about their people, about their products, their services, etc. It's going to help them make better decisions at the end of the day. But it's just a tool. At the end of the day, it's just very clever maths, and people need to think about that, not get carried away. And this goes back to what I said at the beginning, about not overestimating what AI can do, or it's not going to be like iRobot, etc. There's some very useful, very brilliant things that AI can do, but think of it like that, and don't think of it as kind of this science fiction thing. I think that's the key thing. Otherwise expectations get away from you. People get disappointed, etc. But if you keep the expectations at a good level, then that's definitely the road to success. If I can just kind of squeeze one other thing in as well, kind of one of my personal mantras is always think big and act small. So understand where you want to take AI. Think about your ambitions. Do you want to just improve some processes, make them more efficient, or do you want to fundamentally transform your business through AI, or somewhere in between? But understand that end goal, and then how to get that is those small steps, proof of value, etc. Get people on board, have the right to play, and keep going until you reach those goals.
That idea of think big and start small seems to be a pretty universal idea in the world of digital transformation. And I love that continues to come up in these conversations, because that's going to be that's how we get innovative, is by thinking big and then figuring out the small building blocks to get us there. Kieran, you've got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to come to you and ask the same question, and then we'll wrap up our time together. But before I do that, I'm loving seeing all of the comments coming in and all of your thoughts. I have this experience every third Thursday. I would love to put more of them up on the screen, but it would take up the whole screen because there's some really great gold being dropped in the comments. So we will be sure to come back and interact with those comments. And but I love to see that. And I wanted to make a point of that before I come to Kieran and let him give his thoughts on this question as well.
It's a massive question, probably worth more than a couple of minutes of an answer, but I'll distill it. Like the one thing every modern executive should hear, and it's not my quote, it's Andrew Anderson, who's been in this industry for years, a real expert in this place, said the one thing that's not hyped about the data industry is data. There's amazing things you can actually do with it. It's not a magic wand in itself. In other words, a piece of data is not going to just magically tell you something. That's where you mentioned, Emma, earlier on, that you need different people in your business who are going to come together as a group of skilled people to tell that story. The data needs cleaned, the data needs analyzed, then the story needs told. The business needs brought with that story as well, because you can't suddenly black box something and suddenly tell the business, look, this great stuff is magic, just keep going. It sounds like with Andrew's Parkinson's model, the business came with that. They understood what was happening. They understood the why in that. They understood the power of data, and they've seen that in the real world. That will start to build that confidence in usage of the data itself, and start to allow them to see where data can be used in the business. It's not the only thing, though. I always believed and have seen this work because I created data-driven businesses and genuinely data-driven. You have brilliant people who are really well trained in all of the digital skills, business skills themselves. In other words, don't put an analyst in there and expect them to understand the business from day one. Make sure she is trained and learns and knows where you're going. Give them the tools, give them the knowledge of how things work. Have a brilliant SME or subject matter expert in the business. Make sure they're well trained, they're constantly been developed. They understand the power of data and tools and technology and whatever else. Combine the two of those together, and what you will find is using data to enrich decisions and inform a decision that a subject matter expert is really well versed in, i.e. the industry. Pulling those two things together allows you to make far better decisions than you ever could in the past. That's simple analytics. If you start to then build that muscle and start to learn about predictive and prescriptive analytics, then the real power starts to appear, where it's not, if you're an insurance brokerage or something else, understanding who my clients are, who my donors are, for example, but who might be my best donors, who are the ones that I should really target. And then, from that later on, you can start doing your prescriptive, which is, if I want to achieve a particular business result, how do I work backwards? So I would say for every modern executive, the data is amazing and powerful. It's only amazing based on the skill of the analyst. It's only amazing based on the knowledge of the subject matter expert. It's not the only thing that's going to help your business, but it's massively powerful. So again, get on with it. Just do it and start somewhere. It's a particularly good journey.
I'm going to put this comment up. It is too short to have a conversation about AI and data all fit into 30 minutes. We recognize that, but that's part of why we want to start taking these conversations beyond this 30 minutes and into the comments of this video, but as well on the Third Thursday page. Kieran and I are going to start doing more community conversations, because we want to have these conversations open up to be more than just every third Thursday. So make sure that you spend some time over on the Third Thursday company page in addition to these event pages, and start interacting with us there too, because we have so much fun. We don't want to let it last just here. So with that, we are at our time for today. So I am going to thank Katie and Andrew for joining us today, and for all of your brilliant insights, as well as the information that we were able to pass on through the chat. I think having this tangible use case information is so powerful for everybody. Kieran, as always, it's a pleasure. And to everybody who joins us in the comments, thank you so much for joining us, and have a happy Third Thursday, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.